At long last, my time has come.
Well, hello. Welcome, guys. Today's guest is Zethiann for Sage class. Welcome, Zethiann. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
Thank you so much. May you please introduce yourself? Who is Zethiann?
Well, my real name is Chris. I go by Zethiann in-game. 38 years old. Been playing BDO since basically its release on the North American server. Absolutely love this game. Have a wife and 2 kids who occupy the majority of my time, but I try to squeeze in as much BDO in my spare time as I can.
Okay, so how did you find BDO? From a friend or website? How did you go into MMORPG games? How did you decide to play this game?
MMOs, I've been in love with them for years. I've played them since my very first one was Ultima Online. I absolutely fell in love with it. Adventure, the mystery, the discovery. Games back then had so little walkthroughs or videos online, so you really were going into everything blind. Played EverQuest, Ultima Online, Terra. I played almost every other MMO that's come out before BDO. I found out BDO while I was just before I was playing The Division, and I had already quit playing World of Warcraft at that point because it just felt like every expansion was more of the same thing. Release a new expansion, everything you've done prior is basically useless. You do another 3 months and then they release another expansion, and it almost felt like a cycle. So it kind of turned me off from MMOs for a while, and I just dabbled with other games. But I heard about BDO while I was playing The Division, and I heard about a reputation of it being severely pay to win. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to bother playing it. I'll just see what's going on with it, and then maybe I'll come to it later. And then The Division ended up being a huge disappointment to me. So I decided, you know what? Why don't I give BDO a try? And I dove into it, realized that a lot of the pay to win stigma, at least upon release, there was no pay to win in it at all at first, and I was super happy about that, and I absolutely fell in love with the game.
How many years have you been playing your class? Is this your first class? Are there any other classes that you started the game with or tried?
Well, currently I'm playing Sage. I've been playing it since its release. Absolutely love it. Before that, I played Guardian for about a year, and before that, I played Warrior. It must be 4 or 5 years. I have still vastly more hours on my Warrior than all of my other classes combined.
Do you prefer Awakening or Succession right now, and why?
I actually like both quite a bit, but I tend to push a little bit more to Awakening. I don't know what it is about the lightning and the quicker abilities. I really enjoy Awakening, but for large scale and some specific group fights, I will go Succession. I spend the vast majority of my time grinding on Awakening because I just really like the way it feels when grinding. But I'll occasionally do like 1v1 or some large scale with Awakening as well.
You know, as all the other viewers know, I published a PvE tier list. May you please analyze this Sage page in this video?
After the changes, I like it. I agree with the durability being a bit lower. One of the things I've noticed a lot with the higher tier grind spots, you're constantly trying to avoid getting hit because you don't have a lot of ways to get health back, and you get hit pretty hard as a Sage. So you spend a lot more time maneuvering from the spots that hit harder. But for the spots where you don't have to worry about them hitting so hard, it's a great grinder. It moves pretty quick. You have to pay attention to your stamina and your mana, but the mana is resolvable by getting the infinite mana potion. After that, it's just kind of more managing your stamina. But all in all, yeah, I like what you've rated for Sage.
Thank you. let's make it more detailed. May you please give us a bit information about Awakening PvE early games, like one-shot type spots, mid-game spots more like you need to pull mobs, Cycrea, I mean your best, Stars End, Blood Monastery Orcs, and etc. End-game spots like Gaifin, Rasya, Olun, Hexe, and Trolls, maybe Crypt, you grinded in there. May you please share your experience to our viewers?
For the early spots, I am not completely sure because I haven't done a lot of them. You know, Sage only came out a year ago. I've been playing this game for quite a while, so I had a lot of gear. But whenever I go to a place where it's like one shot, you tend to have stamina, and I've heard from other people mana issues. Mana can be resolved, like I said, with the infinite mana potion and a couple add-ons. The add-ons go a long way if you don't have the potion. All in all, it seems to do pretty well. You got some big AoE abilities, some good abilities that you can kill packs while moving as well. Once again, just down to stamina management. For the mid spots where you got to pull them, Awaken Sage definitely starts to pull away from Suck Sage. Chain Lightning is an absolute amazing pulling ability. Hits a massive area, just finds targets everywhere and pulls them into each other. The combos feel nice. It's quite easy to get back attacks because you can Spear Bolt through them. I really love the way it feels. It feels like it's a class that you can get lazy with and grind on it and be really comfortable. But if you want to put in a bit more effort and see how hard you could push it, you can see the benefits from you getting a little bit sweatier with the grind. And I really like that with the class. For the end-game spots, kind of touching back on what I said earlier, the durability of Sage and the lack of sustain, you start to feel that as an issue. Take big hits, you have hard difficulty recovering health. So sometimes you really feel like you're walking on the edge of just about being dead and losing crystals. Once you get into the groove, it feels very satisfying to play it.
So let's talk about PvP. How is this class on 1v1, 1vx, 5v5, I mean Arena of Solar maybe, and large scale?
Awakening 1v1 feels great against most classes. Obviously, you have the other really strong 1v1 classes out there who are difficult for everybody. But I think Awakened Sage is definitely higher up when it comes to 1v1 in terms of, you know, the classes it feels like you can deal with. 1vx, you starting to running into those stamina issues where you have to maneuver around so much in a 1v1, and as soon as you're out of stamina, you have no ability to defend yourself. You lose your tools to attack, you lose your tools to move. You're basically just sitting there hoping and praying that you can quickly get a catch and try to get some stand back. 5v5, it comes back a little bit. The Sage kind of thrives on chaos. Like the more there's going on, the more you move around, people will lose track of you. You become difficult to track when there's lots of people around. People will just give up chasing you and decide to pick another target, and that's kind of your opportunity to start laying down some lightning on people. That applies for large scale too, right? You just need to, as with all classes who need to get closer to the fight, you got to be very careful where you're putting yourself, because the time to kill is so fast in BDO these days that you find yourself in the wrong spot for just a second, all the AoE damage is just going to take you down. But luckily, Awakened Sage and Suck Sage both have, you know, medium range to a lot of their abilities, so you're kind of able to stay back a little bit and keep applying pressure. You don't have to get really deep in there and like some of the melee classes and worry about getting hit by everything.
So I wonder, you're playing Sage as evasion, but people accept that the Sage is playable only in DR. How you can compare with DR and evasion Sage?
Oh, yeah, I get this question a lot. I think both are very viable for Sage. I think a lot of damage is really key to Sage because of the stamina issues. You really want to try to end a fight as long as possible, because if you start trying to drag the fight on, you run out of stamina and it just leaves you in a bad situation. So I think for the vast majority of people picking up Sage, going the DR route, getting that extra AP from Maneuver, pushing your damage as high as you can is the most important thing. As you progress though, a lot of people look at classes and what set of gear they should use based off of their passives and their self buffs. And Sage, as everybody knows, has no evasion passives or self buffs. So immediately they're like, oh, well, this class doesn't work with evasion. But there's other important aspects to building evasion. One that I know a lot of classes like Striker Mystic wish they had is the pure evasion offhand. So that would be like your parry dagger. For Sage, it's your Rick. There's an option for most classes in the game to have an evasion offhand that has significantly more evasion and one more AP than the Rosar option that's available for other classes. That gives you a significant amount more of evasion, but it comes at an AP cost. And I'll get back to that AP cost. The other bonus is Sage is actually tied for one of the highest base evasions. So it's up there with Ninja, Kuno, Striker and Mystic when it comes to magic. Hash, it has very, very high base evasion. So you have like a really high starting point. And even though you don't have those evasion passives and those evasion self buffs, you have offensive ones, which work in your favor because it allows you, when you're putting in all those swaps, to have more damage. And instead of at 269, you doing very abysmal damage, because you have those extra passives when you put on the Sissel Centaur and the Rick, it allows you to push out more damage as if you were 285, even though you've already dropped down to 269. But if you want to go full damage, you have that option. I really actually prefer offensive passives because it gives me that flexibility. Do I want more damage in this moment, or do I want more survivability? I feel like there's some other classes out there where if you drop your AP down to even 269, you really start to feel the loss to your damage. Man, there was something I was going to come back to. Oh, back to the damage point. That's right. I started this by saying I feel like damage is the most important thing with Sage. I really don't recommend anybody going evasion on Sage until they're like pushing Try Fallen God, C20s, and they have a couple pen accessories, because you really want to maintain your damage as high as possible because of those stamina issues.
So what about Succession PvE? Early game, mid game, and end game, like the first question.
I like Succession PvE. It's not as interactive as Awakening. It's a bit more relaxed, but it has really big AoEs. The abilities feel nice off of each other. It's very aesthetically pleasing. I remember when they first showed the trailer for Sage and they advertised him as big damage. They started showing the abilities. It kind of gave me that Doctor Strange vibe. I love Marvel. I absolutely fell in love with it, and it felt amazing on release. Well, on release, it had some bugs, but once they fixed the bugs and overtuned it, it felt great for grinding. They toned it back a bit. It still felt good, but once they released Awakening, I really liked Awakening for grinding, so I stuck with that. But all in all, I think it's a fun class to grind on. It has a very similar feel to Guardian, but a little bit more, you got your Rift Chain to kind of maneuver around, be a bit more sneaky and unpredictable. Not that you need that in PV, but you still feel that way. You get that vibe while you're playing it, right?
I love that accuracy and minus evasion thing on Succession. It's huge.
Oh, it's laughably huge. Like, you have some classes in this game who have no accuracy. You have some classes who have decent accuracy. You have some classes who have too much accuracy. And then you have Suck Sage, where it's just a comical amount of accuracy and evasion debuffs, to the point where you're like, what were they thinking giving this class this much? It made a big deal a while ago when the vast majority of the players were evasion, because you were just instantly deleting them. But now that more people are switching to DR, I mean, DR still gets hit very hard by it, but you don't see like this massive swing as much as you used to, especially after the nerfs that they did to Suck Sage a while back. They kind of brought that back with the recent buffs. It's hitting hard again, but everybody hits very hard.
Hopefully they will bring us... I'm playing Valkyrie, and I really want that. Evasion classes are very... They have privilege, I can say that, a clear privilege than the other classes. So I want percentage DR on my Valkyrie. I cannot go evasion on Valkyrie because it's not working like the other classes. No passive, nothing. And I need AP, I need accuracy, and etc. I cannot build them, and I cannot be tanky. What if they give us a percentage DR for DR classes, DR-based classes? What do you think about it?
I think that's tricky to balance, because there are advantages that DR has, and if you start allowing DR to build just as tanky as evasion without giving out those advantages that they also get for being DR, which is having that extra AP from the offhand and having the resistances, which I wish weren't even in the game in PvP, but that's a different topic. But you have those advantages. So if you allowed DR classes to build just as tanky as evasion without those sacrifices, it would just be the better choice, and then we would end up with the opposite situation. I wish all classes were able to build either evasion or DR. Just like you said, there are some classes who are just exceptional at it, and then there's some classes who are exceptionally bad at it. Valkyrie is not as good with evasion as the majority of the classes in the game. Nova suffers, Warrior suffers, Guardian, Zerker. Yeah. You got these lists of classes that, you can build evasion, but, ideally you want to be building DR, because you really notice the trade-offs aren't in your favor when you start building the evasion route. You're just giving up too much damage, and it feels like your class doesn't function nearly as well as it used to. I always thought that I wish they would tone down the passives with accuracy and evasion, and then buff the accuracy and evasion on gear. This way, when it comes to how well your class deals with evasion or builds with evasion, came down more to how you build instead of just what you chose at character select.
So may you please give us a bit of information about Succession PvP?
Succession PvP is very fun. Oh my goodness. I absolutely love Succession Sage in PvP because it feels very original. Awakened Sage kind of feels like your typical rat, right? It's just moving around, trying to grab people, do some quick damage. But Suck Sage, like, there's this element of surprise and unpredictability that you have to apply to it. It feels very different than anything else I've played. Drops big damage, big AoEs. If you are an exceptional player and have really good situational awareness, positioning, you can do do really well with Suck Sage. In large scale, you still, fall behind the meta siege classes, whether it's Witch Wizard, Zerker, Ranger, Mooses are doing well. You guys know the classes. But it's definitely an asset to your team. It's not a liability like some classes, and it feels really nice to play.
So what do you think about BDO for current situation? You are one of the most experienced player in the game and also streamer on Twitch. You played this game a lot. You know so much thing about this game. From past until now, what changed and what should be changed in the future?
Ooh, listing what changed is a long list. This game has come so far since its release. I loved it upon release, but looking back on it now, it was kind of bare bones when it came out. In a sense, life skills, it felt like there was more options in terms of different things you can do other than grinding, but everything itself felt very unpolished and raw. And as the years have come by, they've improved different assets of the game. The central market was probably one of the most impactful changes to this game in the history of this game. I think successions were a big mistake to this game. I think that was the turning point where they just started pumping out damage and CCs, and this game started to lose a lot of the original combat, like this cat and mouse game you would play with classes where the fights were drawn out long enough. It wasn't just people trading damage into each other while SA'd. And Successions came out, and then all of a sudden they had to do something with Awakenings to have them keep up with Successions. So they started pumping up Awakening damage and protections, and all of a sudden, now that they pumped up Awakenings so much, Awakening classes couldn't use nearly as many tools from their main hand because they just weren't as good. So I think Successions were a mistake. I wish they were implemented a little bit better, maybe even as like a completely new toolkit or something instead of pumping up protections. Rifts were an amazing addition. I remember before they added the rifts that spawned, getting accessories was miserable. Every single accessory was always sold out on the market. We had very little events giving stuff. You had to basically camp the market trying to buy base accessories just to do your enhancements. Having good accessories at that point was really prestigious because it was just really tedious and difficult. So when they added the rifts to start flooding the market with accessories, really marked a turning point in your ability to improve your gear.
So if you have a chance to add new feature to BDO or change something, what would it be?
The number one thing on my list is the Alchemy Stone system. I'm probably maybe the only person in the game to have all 3 splendid Alchemy Stones, mostly by sheer luck. I got in early with the Resplendent Destruction Stones before anybody was pushing for them, and then I managed to click one of those really quickly to Splendid. I got super lucky during that box event almost a year ago now, where occasionally people would get Splendids. I managed to buy a Splendid Life Stone, and just a couple months ago I figured, well, since I have 2 of them, I might as well push for the protection one. And after about 200 billion silver later, I managed to get that one too. So I have all 3, but it's a system that's been just completely ignored. I would love to see them rework it so everybody can have access to these items. I think that there's some very minor changes they could do that would improve it in a very big way, like adding the ability to Cronstone the stones. Obviously that would be a little bit more difficult in EU. Cronstones are more difficult to acquire there. So I'm probably a little bit biased to NA. We have a lot more access to them there, but I think protecting those stones would go a long way. Also, removing the skip animations go a long way. I even think that now that we have a defensive addition to our alchemy stones through the Hex Forest grind, getting the blessed addition, I think it would be a neat addition to add the ability to add Avels to your protection stone or to your alchemy stone. Having those 2 options available like we do with our accessories will let you build one or the other. They would probably have to buff the defensive one a little bit because the 3 AP from Avel, like applying Avel's concentrated magic to your Splendid Stone, would definitely be better than the defensive option. I like having options to our pieces of gear. I think it adds a bit more to build identity. So when you run into, Warrior A, Warrior B, Warrior C, they can all feel very different based on, how they've decided to build their character. Another thing I would love to see added to the game, and everybody I'm sure would agree with this, is crystal presets being attached to our skill presets. Being locked with your crystal choices, especially when you have spots in this game that require very specific skill setups. Crypt of Resting Thoughts, Ash Force, there's these spots that you have to have very specific crystal builds in order to do them. And you really don't want to be taking your PvP crystals out there either, especially your Jin special evasions, because that's just tragedy if those break. Giving us the flexibility to have like a PvP setup and a PvE setup would go a long way to improving the quality of life of players in the game. The amount of notifications they put on our screen is just mind-boggling these days. It seems like every time you reach a loading screen and you come out, there's something on your screen. Buy pearls, pearls, buy pearls, buy pearls. You almost feel like you're browsing some of these more sketchy websites that are just throwing ads at you every 2 seconds. I wish there was, I understand it. I just wish there was a way to turn it off, right? I mean, I don't need to see it for the 1000th time to know that it's there. I know it's there now. They've pushed it into my brain hard enough. It'd be nice too, like when your workers complete tasks, there's no way to turn off the resources they're acquiring. You constantly have that flickering on your screen. It would be nice for them to address that as well. Just overall, I would really like a much more customizable UI, assets of the UI that just can't be modified at all. And I really wish that they could. I really appreciate games that have more flexibility with their interface. And this one's probably a more complicated one to handle because this is a player-driven economy to a certain degree. There's a lot of dead items. I recognize there's a lot of times where they will address some of these dead items and they'll add it to other things in the game, and they do a decent job. But there's some other items, like I grind underwater, as people have seen from my stream, all the time, and I have over 200 secret songs saved up, and it would be really nice if they added something to do with those. Considering, I mean, you have the water horse gear, but if you were to actually try to make water horse gear sets, you would have to go out to either Manshams or Polys to try to grind the water fragments. It's a tedious process. It's not worth your time, because the opportunity cost of spending that much time at those spots to get those water fragments isn't going to be made up with the sale of that gear. So basically the secret songs, once you got enough for your water horse set, you just let them pile up to infinity. But if there's one thing I've learned with BDO is you are rewarded for hoarding items eventually. Eventually they'll change an item, and if you have been hoarding it since you've been acquiring it, you'll usually be rewarded for it. So I've been saving all my secret songs.
Maybe they will bring new things when they release that deep sea update they announced, but I don't know when they will release.
Yeah, potentially. I was really hoping that when they added the water horse, the unicorn, the T10, that they were going to use these secret songs for that, because they had the mythical feathers for the T10 Pegasus, which made sense. I thought the secret songs would have been perfect as an item for that. I guess it would have been a little bit more difficult for people who wanted to do attempts on that horse, because you would have actually had to go out and grind them instead of being able to buy them off the market. So they probably would have needed to make them sellable. But I really felt that was a missed opportunity to make those secret songs more usable.
Maybe they can add some kind of interesting items like secret song for tier 10 Dine, and when you put one secret song, it increased the 2% or 1% more chance for per try. Maybe can be doable. I don't know, because 3%. I tried 26 times. I'm still trying. I'm done with this.
Yeah, I've been trying to work on a horse too. I wish I was doing. I didn't start right when it came out, and I kind of regret it. But I'm about the same attempts as you, and I'm not quite at 30 yet, but I'm getting close to there, and I still don't have it. And it is a shame that you just have this flat 3% chance. Like you get like 2 attempts every 3 weeks. It's a really time gated item. There's people who have been working on it since the beginning, and they still don't have their horse. And it would be nice if there was some way to improve your chances of doing that. If they want to use secret songs for that, I'm fully down for that, because I have 200 of them.
So what are your advices for newbie or returnee or whoever wants to reroll Sage?
For new players, come into BDO not being competitive. Try to get lost in the game. Explore this game for what it is. There's no right or wrong way to play it. Well, let me correct that. There is a wrong way to play it. If you're not having fun, you're playing it. There's a lot of ways to have fun in this game. One mistake I see a lot of people make when they come into BDO is they dive into it and they try to learn everything as quickly as possible. And there's a lot of things going on in BDO. None of them are really complicated, but there's just so many different things that if you dive into this game and try to learn it all at once, it can feel quite overwhelming. So just take it one step at a time, explore something. Once you feel great with it, move on to the next, and just slowly discover this game. Let the adventure really take over. Even more importantly, don't be too competitive with your friends. There's so much luck involved with this game. I've seen people come in here with a group of friends. You have one member of the group who gets really lucky and he just skyrockets ahead of everybody, and it leaves their friends in despair, who might be even working harder than this person at trying to progress their character. And they're like, well, how come I got to put in 4 hours a day, multiple days a week, and this guy's logging in just an evening and all of a sudden he's past me? If you get stuck in that feeling of despair, like you're wasting your time, you start making bad mistakes and you'll start blowing up gear trying to catch up to them. And luck is a big thing, and you'll just leave yourself in an even more miserable position. For the most part, luck usually averages out. Those people who get lucky will usually get unlucky. They'll think that they'll try to ride that luck as long as possible until the luck runs out, and then they end up back to where they started, or maybe even further behind than they should have been. Make sure you're playing the game in a way you enjoy. Don't get tilted by other people's success. Just make sure sure you're having fun with your progression. You'll eventually meet them at the end, whether they skyrocket there or you beat them there. You'll get there. And yeah, very much take advantage of buying gear. The Central Market has made that super easy. As for new Sage players, main hand Sage feels very rough. It feels very unrefined as a new player. The movement feels weird because you don't have the max ranks of your abilities. The AoEs feel very fixed and slow, but it really starts to speed up and pick up as you rank things up. So you just gotta kind of stick with it, and eventually you'll start unlocking some of the cancels and the movement. Things will start speeding up and it'll start feeling like a much more usable class.
We are coming towards the end of the interview, and is there anything you would like to add?
Not particularly. I'm absolutely hooked on BDO. I love the BDO community. I think we have a bunch of amazing content creators who are trying to make some of the best content they can in a game that's kind of difficult to make content for, because I think a lot of people take for granted how much changes in BDO. I've played a lot of games in the past where, every 3 months you're lucky to see a decent patch. And in BDO, we're lucky every week to be excited about what's going on Global Lab or what's coming to NA, what's coming to KR, because that's usually a hint of what's coming to NA soon. I think a lot of people take that change for granted, and I absolutely love that about BDO. I had a thought that was supposed to lead into, and I can't remember where I'm going. Sorry, my age is catching up to me. Yeah, a lot of people take that for granted, and I just absolutely love the change that happens in BDO. Oh yeah, that's right. It makes it difficult, because there's so much change going on, it makes it difficult to make content for BDO, because you could spend tens of hundreds of hours maybe making a video. I don't make videos, but I imagine some of them take a ton of time to do your research and make sure you get it right. And then all of a sudden, Pearl Abyss puts out a patch changing it, and your guide is meaningless. It's lost a lot of the truth to it. Now you got to make a whole new guide. It can be kind of frustrating making guides for it. So yeah, content creators who try to constantly keep everything up to date with BDO, I have massive respect for them. It's a huge undertaking for this game, and the community, the vast majority of people work together very well. We understand that a rising tide raises all boats, right? If everybody's doing a good job working together, making this an enjoyable product for everybody, the whole community benefits from it. I've seen some games in the past where every single content creator's at each other's throats and trying to tear each other down, and that's just a toxic way to try to deal with a community. So yeah, I love BDO for its game. I love BDO for its community. I love people who do like this, like interviews, and try to get different perspectives from people and introduce people to the community.
I want to say thank you. You accepted my invitation. You shared all these experience in general to people. You mentioned that game is changing every week almost. Maybe every 6 months, classes changing in general. That's why I don't want to put more details in this interview. We should talk in general about the classes like the other interviews. That's why all the questions are in general. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. This was fun. I look forward to listening to the other interviews. I just heard about your channel recently. I was going to listen to the interviews before I got into it, but I thought, you know what? I kind of want to go into it with just my own thought, not being influenced by others, like the feedback they've given you yet. So I look forward to actually going back through the interviews now that I've done mine and seeing how the feedback from the others kind of aligns with how I feel about the game.
Thank you so much. All right, guys, do not forget, BDO is just a game. Have a nice game.